But that may be his argument. Mitch McConnell's always going to say things that make no sense. That's the establishment's way. Consider this. We're sitting in a state now that's gone Republican for as long as we can remember. It's a very conservative, very red state. Mr. Espy might be a nice guy, but he was a Clinton appointee, strike one. Let's just face it. He was a Clinton appointee just after Hillary was defeated in this state. Strike two is he had the misfortune of being indicted while in office, and he had to step down. I want to be clear. Mississippi is not going to send a Democrat to the U.S. Senate. Lucian Smith, our state party director, said that just a few days ago. The Democrats can think they can win this state, and we hope they do. We hope they pour millions into this state because they're going to put money here they should be spending somewhere else, and we're going to beat them either way.
Now, 38% of Mississippi is black.
Yes, sir.
I'm from Moss Point. If you were elected to the U.S. Senate, you're supposed to represent the whole state.
Yes, sir.
Your position around the Confederate flag. Your position around hip-hop as the source of gun violence, your position around Robert E. Lee. I can go on and on and on.
Please do.
How do you convince black folk in this state that you're not a danger to them?
The story that you talked about, the hip-hop connection to violence, that was a study from Berkeley. Berkeley's not exactly a conservative institution, but it did link hip-hop to violence. That's Berkeley, not me. And I was just cited that on the radio show. That's the first thing. Number two, our flag has been here an awfully long time. And in 2001, 65% of Mississippians chose to keep that flag. Now, the thing about flags, like any symbol, is they are subject to different interpretations. But if 65% of the people have voted to keep that flag, we should respect their wishes. The flag can be offensive to some. I recognize that. But almost all symbols are offensive to someone. At some point, the majority has to control that decision. That's exactly what we did. So I'm going to stand with the majority in that instance. Now, if the people of Mississippi want to start another referendum and want to change it, that's the direct democracy concept they like to push sometimes. Okay. But I'm going to stand for that flag because the people have stood for it.
So how would you speak to that 38%? Those 38% of this state? What are you going to ask them?
I'm going to ask them after 100 years of relying on big government to save you, where are you today? After 100 years of begging for federal government scraps, where are you today? We've been dead last for 100 years. 100 years. I mean the state of Mississippi. I'm talking about the state of Mississippi. We've been dead last for 100 years. And what happens is, if we keep depending on that economic model, we're always going to stay last. Our state depends heavily on federal funds, right? Because of that, we're not able to create the prosperous environment we need to grow.
So how do you do that? How do you move Mississippi up in categories, whether it's